A $380 million settlement has been reached between USA Gymnastics and hundreds of sex abuse victims of Larry Nassar. The organization will also add several policies aimed at protecting future athletes. Rachel Den Hollander, the first gymnast to come forward with claims against Nassar, tweeting, "This chapter is finally closed. Now the hard work of reform and rebuilding can begin. Whether or not justice comes and change is made depends on what happens next." Here's NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson.
Hey, Lindsay, this ends a 5-year legal battle. The settlement will be paid for by USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee and its insurers. It allows USA Gymnastics to come out of bankruptcy and finally bring some change to the organization. The greatest gymnast of all time, Simone Biles, says failed to protect her and her teammates.
For years, they performed breathtaking feats while hiding the horror of sexual abuse. Now some of women's gymnastics' biggest names, including Simone Biles, Aly Raisman, Michaela Maroney, and more than 500 other athletes, will have an opportunity to share in a $380 million settlement for what was done to them. Jessica Howard is one of the plaintiffs.
It's validation, and it feels like justice.
This fall, Biles, Maroney, Raisman, and Maggie Nichols detailed the abuse for Congress.
All we needed was one adult to do the right thing.
The agreement with USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee covers abuse by any person associated with USA Gymnastics. The most notorious, Dr. Larry Nassar, the former doctor of the U.S. women's team, now serving what amounts to life in prison for sexually assaulting minors during supposed treatment.
To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
The world saw the lingering impact of abuse at the Summer Olympics when Biles withdrew for part of the competition, telling Hoda,
"As soon as we stepped onto the Olympic scene, it's just decided it couldn't do it anymore, and it cracked, and that's what happens."
A system that Maroney told Savannah in 2018 didn't care about the women.
All they cared about was their reputation, money, gold medals, and that was it.
USA Gymnastics is apologizing, saying the bankruptcy reorganization reflects our own accountability to the past and our commitment to the future. The USOPC issuing its own mea culpa. "We recognize our role in failing to protect these athletes, and we are sorry for the profound hurt they have endured," saying it's enacted sweeping reforms to combat sexual abuse.
Under the agreement, at least one abuse survivor will sit on the USA Gymnastics Board of Directors and 2 of its committees. The money will be allocated by a retired judge who's done the same thing in a $500 million settlement with Michigan State University over Larry Nassar.
Our thanks to Ann Thompson for that reporting. Joining me right now is Jeanette Antolin, former Team USA gymnast and abuse survivor. So, Jeanette, thank you for your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Of course.
You know, it's been just over 24 hours since the settlement was announced. I'm sure it's been a whirlwind and a roller coaster for you, but how are you feeling right now in this moment?
There's definitely a sense of relief. I just feel validated after 5 years of fighting for justice and for accountability. It wasn't easy. There was a lot of people involved, our lawyers, the survivors, doing countless interviews and just fighting for years to get our validation that this actually happened and to get an apology. For the longest time, that's what we were asking for, was some sort of apology from USA Gymnastics and USOPC. And it took 5 years, but we finally got it. I read it in an article, and it feels like validation finally, and that they've finally taken accountability.
Just validation that it happened. I mean, just a striking thing you just said. You talk about the long road. You first came forward with your abuse claims against Nassar in 2017. You called him the spawn of Satan at a sentencing hearing in 2018. But as you just mentioned, it's been interviews and you've had to relive and recount your trauma. Does this signal hopefully somewhat of an end to that?
There's definitely an end to the settlement. As far as our work goes as survivors, not really, because we want to see the reform happen. We have to follow up because they've lied to us so many times. We can't trust that what they say they're going to do, they're actually going to do. So reforms like having a survivor on the board is very important to us.
Yeah, a burden you still carry to make sure that and follow up that all of these reforms are in fact made. So let's talk about some of these reforms here. You mentioned a survivor being on the board. From what you're hearing right now, obviously you do want to follow up and make sure that this all comes to fruition, but is it enough for you? Is there anything else that you'd like to see?
Of course. I mean, as of right now, the only one that's been prosecuted has been Larry Nassar. And as we know, with over 500 survivors, he wasn't the only one that was guilty of something and letting this happen. So, I mean, there's people like Steve Penny and Scott Blackman from the USOPC that they should be held accountable as well. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that it's taken this long to have this settled, and now we go forward with trying to get more justice with these individuals.
I want to bring in right now your attorney, John Manley, here. And John, thanks for being with us. You know, after the announcement, you said we prevailed for one simple reason, the courage of all of the survivors. How do you feel right now in this moment in terms of what's been gained, but still what still needs to be accomplished?
Well, I think that, you know, the courage of people like Jeanette, who spoke out early and often about the case, is what won the day. But as gratifying as this civil case is, there's a real concern that no one at USA Gymnastics and the USOPC or the FBI, who we were able to prove conspired to hide Larry Nassar, has been indicted. And you don't need to believe me. Just ask the Department of Justice Inspector General and the United States Senate. You know, no one's been indicted. They referred Scott Blackman, the president of the U.S. Olympic Committee, to the justice, a criminal referral the U.S. Senate did for perjury. These women have been promised action by the Department of Justice, and nothing's happened. So I guess, you know, we're going to have to take matters into their own hands, but it's a really sad day when a group of personal injury lawyers has to do the work that our government's supposed to be doing in protecting children. And make no mistake, our government failed these women as children grossly.
So that said, what is next for you and your clients? Does this mean that this is something you will continue to carry and fight for? Ultimately, how does one achieve the change that you're trying to, which also includes more accountability here, more charges? Is that just a matter of remaining vocal to this issue, John?
I think that what made the difference in this case is dragging these institutions and the people responsible for enabling not just Larry Nassar, but the dozens of other coaches who molested children who are also part of this settlement into the light of day. Somebody said once, sunshine is the greatest cleanser. I screwed that up, but whatever, that, you know the phrase. And it's sunshine on their conduct that allows institutions to change. The Catholic bishops didn't begin to change until Catholic bishops began to go to jail for hiding perpetrator priests in this country. And until someone goes to jail for the worst child molestation case by a single perpetrator in American history, I think that's a green light to keep going. And so I think it's very important to my clients and to those who support them that this never happened to another little girl. The money is great, and it was 5 years in the making, and it happened over the objections of the best corporate legal talent money can buy. And it happened because of their courage, but these women aren't done.
Talking about courage, Jeanette, what advice do you have for women and for athletes who are afraid to speak out about abuse?
It's definitely a scary thing. It takes a lot of courage, but at the end of the day, like me and my sister survivors, we got the job done, and it's still not over, but your voice will be listened to eventually. Even at first, you're discouraged. I mean, we've been discouraged so many times after telling our story time and time again, but finally, like I said today, there's a sense of relief and validation. And you will be believed by at least us and as survivors. If there's anything that we can ever do, I know I'm here for people that reach out to me on social media, people I meet in my town. I'm willing to help any way I can because I know how hard this road is. And to be believed is so important.
Well, Jeanette, we so appreciate you coming on to talk about not only your experience, but this settlement. John, our thanks to you as well. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.